Many of you have been watching the hearings dealing with Judge Brett Kavanaugh and his pending approval or non-approval by the U.S. Senate. It's really been important, but it's also been outrageous. Well, we're going to talk in the second half of the show about this hearing, but also about the judge and some actual casework that we at Pacific Justice Institute have had dealing with this judge. And I think you'll find it very interesting. Now, in the first half of the show, we have something very special for you. And it's going to be an opportunity for you to possibly get involved in missionary work straight from your home. And we're really excited about this. I found out about this. I thought, I can't keep this to myself. I've got to let you folks know about this because you might want to get involved. And it's so incredible with regard to the work that this ministry is doing across the country for the kingdom. To talk with us about this ministry, Global Media Outreach, we have with us on the line Al De La Roche. Al, are you there?
I am. Thank you, Brad.
Great. Now, Al, I really, once again, appreciate you being on the program. Give the audience first an idea of what is Global Media Outreach. What exactly is that? It's a big name, but yet you guys are a big ministry having a big impact.
Well, let me first say thank you, Brad, again for having me on. But if I go back to what our founder told us, Walt Wilson established this ministry back in 2004, and he describes the work we do at Global Media Outreach this way. He said, we're a technology company that does ministry. So when you think about that, at Global Media Outreach, we do, in a sense, digital evangelism around the globe.
Okay.
And
digital evangelism around the globe. All right, some people are thinking like, okay, how do I put my hands around that? Do you parachute cell phones to people? What exactly? How do you do that? What exactly, it goes on with GMO?
Okay, well, let me give you just a kind of a quick look at the fact that technology started when we think about how God's word went out through history. In the early days of the church, the apostles strapped on their sandals, set out on foot, and that was the technology of their day. It was the Roman road. Centuries later, you have missionary movements that were followed by large-scale evangelism. Billy Graham filled stadiums. Moody Bible Institute then moved into the airwaves, much like you're doing, with their opportunity to share the gospel. And then along comes this thing called the World Wide Web. It appeared back in the late 90s, and the first cell phone was introduced in 2007. And
right.
That speeded up the way the technology changed. So here's a couple of figures for you. There are about 7.2 billion people on Earth and about 7.8 billion cell phone subscriptions.
Oh, wait a minute. I want to make sure I got that right because that's more subscriptions than there are people. Is that?
That is absolutely right.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that every person on Earth has a cell phone.
Right.
There's still about 2 billion people in the world that don't. But the gap today is quickly closing. There's currently about 91% of people in the world that live within the range of a cell tower, but that's where things get interesting. In 2017, about 2.6 billion people use social networks like Facebook, WhatsApp, Twitter. They find that people spend on the average of about 2 hours and 15 minutes every day. A teenage girl spends almost 10 hours a day on social media.
Right. Now, Al, you're giving some great background here, and I appreciate that. But how does that fit in? How does GMO fit into what you're talking about here? I mean, you're talking about a ministry that is impacting millions of people. The stats are incredible about the number of people coming to Christ. I want the audience to really understand that. So that's a great backdrop of history. Mm-hmm. But moving forward, what exactly does your ministry do? Because I want to make sure we cover that because we have a limited amount of time.
Yeah, we have a vision of using technology to reach people around the world. And mostly that's the internet and mobile technology. We share the gospel through the internet and mobile phones. We use banner ads and pop-up ads that drive people to a gospel presentation, and then we offer them a chance to have a relationship with the living God.
Okay, now we're getting now this is what's so exciting. So you're sending out banner ads and you're sending out, I guess, with the gospel on it. People they'll see this banner ad, say they're in someplace in Chad, Africa,
mm-hmm.
and they see this on their cell phone and they push a button And does it call you guys, or is there a chat room, or what happens?
No, it goes to a website, and they get a chance to be asked a question on whether or not they want to receive Christ, and they can learn more about it through this website. We build relationships with those people that come on a website through this technology, with an opportunity for them to click on an ad. They ask her a couple of questions. They get asked a couple of questions. They answer those, and then if they indicate that they would like to know more, they can get more information about what we're doing. Then they can get connected with an online missionary who will coach them through that process, allow them to make an indicated decision for Christ, and when they do, we get a chance to disciple them. So it's more than just technology transactional. It's about a relationship with an online missionary. We have a thing called anonymous intimacy, where people can contact us through technology. We don't know where they're at. They don't know where we're at, but we'll connect with them via email, and an online missionary that's trained and volunteers their time, and they will have a relationship with them because they will click on an ad and accept Christ, come to these online missionaries, and be coached in a new faith and be introduced to opportunities for discipleship.
Okay, so you're sending out banner ads, you're connecting with people on their mobile phones and on the internet around the world in places where missionaries often can't even go or go safely.
That is correct.
Okay.
We go where traditional missionaries can't go, and we go to some of the hard places around the world on purpose.
Right. And a lot of countries, exactly, where it's really tough, there's a lot of hostility, and yet you're there, you're impacting, they see this, they get some questions answered, they respond to that, they go to the website, get some questions answered, and then there's a dialogue created via email, correct?
Yes,
where
correct.
Where they're discuss the gospel, their questions about, who is Jesus, what exactly did he, why should I put my faith in him? Why did he die on the cross? Whatever, they have that conversation, that dialogue, one-on-one, and they come to Christ. And then after they come to Christ, what happens then? Are they just you say, well, may God bless you, and I hope you find a Bible somewhere? Or what kind of follow-up is there?
Well, we have a wonderful partnership with a large group of other organizations that present content. We don't really develop any content. We're really focused on the evangelism piece and the discipleship we do. What we do is we can give them a couple of opportunities to go to, we're the largest referral network for the YouVersion Online Bible.
Okay, good. So they get their Bible resources, that kind of made available to them. So they've got that. And then are they encouraged to become a part of a church or a group of believers? Is that a part of it?
That's a really hard part, but it's a great question, Brad. The evangelism and discipleship piece is something that we really excel at. The Christian community is really hard to monitor, especially in some of those difficult places that we do ministry.
Right.
So what we try to do when we talk about connecting them, we try to connect them with either partners on the ground or their online missionary really is their Christian community until they can find a place to worship.
Excellent. But that relationship's there, that connection's there. That's awesome. How many people, now folks, these numbers I think you're going to find this pretty startling. How many people have come to Christ through this ministry, say just so far this year? 1,000?
Well, let me just tell you this. In the last year, we had over 118 million people that saw a gospel presentation, and about 10% of that, about 111 million, came to Christ.
So about 11 million?
11 million, yes.
So about 11 million have come to Christ, made professions of faith to come to Christ as their Lord and Savior, and over 100 million have heard the gospel, but 10%, over 11 million have come to Christ just this year alone, just in last year. Is that right?
In the last year.
In the last year. Folks, this is huge. This is huge. And that's why I'm so excited about this ministry. It's impacting the world in a dramatic way here at this time, at this juncture, like never before. And here's what's really exciting. You can become a part of this ministry briefly, tell us how they can become a part of this ministry, how they themselves in their home can become a minister and reach out and engage with these people, because you have a need for that. You have a shortage of people, as I understand it, to be engaging. Real quickly, how do they do that?
Always a need for more opportunity. If you go to globalmediaoutreach.com, that's our website. But there's 3 different opportunities that you have to engage. One is prayer. We're built on a culture of prayer. That's the heart of this ministry, and nothing moves forward without it. So we dedicate that, and you could be praying along with us for our opportunities to reach seekers day in and day out. You know, the work we do when we share a gospel presentation costs us 10 cents. We do it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year in 26 languages and in 195 countries. Another way that you could partner with us is to volunteer. If you'd like information about becoming an online missionary, we have a 6-week training course you can learn more about at that website, again, globalmediaoutreach.com.
Al, that's really important, because that's the thrust of what I really want people to understand, is that they can become a part of this ministry, and it's needed, and they can have a real impact evangelizing in their home, right where they're at, maybe during break time at work, whatever. That, I think, is so important. Once again, for people to become a part of that, this ministry, where do they go again to do this?
You can find out more at globalmediaoutreach.com.
Globalmediaoutreach.com. Globalmediaoutreach.com. Al, we're out of time, but I really appreciate you being on the program. And folks, once again, this is a ministry to pray for. It's a ministry to get behind, and it's a ministry to become a part of. If you, after prayer, feel like God wants you to become a part of this, don't sit on the bench. Let your life count and be a part of a ministry that is having a major impact in the days that we are in now for the kingdom of God. Al, thank you for being on the program. God bless you. Godspeed the work that you're doing. And it's been a real pleasure and delight to have you on the program.
Thank you, Brad. Appreciate the opportunity.
God bless. Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.
In a war, the most strategic place to be is behind enemy lines. It leaves your opponent exposed, vulnerable. It positions you to gain ground, to build momentum, and ultimately to have victory. But to infiltrate the opposing line, you need soldiers willing to take on the risk. In America today, the blue wall is that line, and we are those soldiers willing to take the risk to protect your freedoms. We provide cover for the medics, pastors, churches, parents, families, businesses, men and women, and other ordinary people who live their faith boldly. We've been behind the blue wall for over 30 years, defending more people on the West Coast for free than any other ministry of its kind. But now we have an opportunity to go even deeper into opposing territory where the most secular cultures thrive. We have our sights on Washington and Oregon. Just this year, we've sent an attorney to Portland, Oregon, to provide protection for the people there. But we have to do more. New York, Jersey City, Seattle, Denver, Chicago, Detroit, Philadelphia, El Paso, Las Vegas, Columbus, Miami, Minneapolis, Baltimore. The possibilities are endless. In a war, a soldier's willingness to fight isn't enough. He needs equipment and ammunition and body armor. That's where you come in. It takes an army of support to win freedom. Why not join us to help us win? We only need $25,000 to start each outpost in blue, secular cities across the nation. If you give, you get to choose which city we go to next. Let's work together and provide people of faith the cover they need to work for the flourishing of their cities.
And folks, if you'd like to support the Pacific Justice Institute on either a one-time or a monthly basis, it is very much appreciated. We do our work without charge. We help hundreds and hundreds of people all across the United States without charge because of support from people like you. And in fact, we handle more cases, particularly on the West Coast, than any other organization. And we're also unique in that we don't just take on the high-profile cases. We work hard to make sure that everyone gets help, that no one's left on the side of the road. And we do this because of support from people like you. So if you'd like to support the work of Pacific Justice, or you have a request for assistance, or you'd like to take a look at our resources, go to our website, pji.org. That's P for Pacific, J for Justice, I for Institute.org, pji.org. And we have some great resources, including an analysis of Judge Brett Kavanaugh's past decisions. We did our own independent analysis. You'll find this very eye-opening, and I know you'll really appreciate it. Now, we have with us here in studio one of our star attorneys on staff, Michael Peffer. He heads up our Southern California office. Thank you, Michael, for being on the program.
My pleasure, Brad. It's always good to be here.
Now, Michael, you've been watching very closely the Kavanaugh hearings. A lot of Americans have been watching it very closely. Some of them have been a little nauseated by the whole thing.
That's right.
I know I have in how it's been conducted. I think our founding fathers would be extremely disturbed about the I'm trying to think of a nice adjective that still describes it without being
Shenanigans.
Thank you, that have been taking place, orchestrated behind the scenes by senators.
That's right.
To create disruptions, totally uncalled for, and yet it's still very significant about what's gone on and what he's testified about. One of the things he talked about was a very important case, a case that Pacific Justice, it was our case, the Newdow versus Roberts case, dealing with praying and prayer at a presidential inauguration. Tell us about this case and give us some insight with regards to exactly the role that Judge Brett Kavanaugh played. I think it's very revealing.
I think it is too, Brad, and thank you. The Newdow case, the other two justices on the D.C. Court of Appeals, they dealt with the procedural issue, but Judge Kavanaugh, he actually dealt with the religious liberty issue here, and in his writing separately, he wrote separately about, first of all, why we take seriously the notion of religious liberty. Yeah. Why we take seriously the fact that sometimes people of different faiths and maybe non-faiths might disagree with this. But most importantly for us, he talked about a case called Marsh, which is an old case which says we have a long historical tradition of opening solemn governmental meetings with prayer. And as such, the notion that we might say, "So help you me God," at the inauguration is simply part of our history.
Right. And it's a long part of our history, our heritage as a nation. And so having an invocation, a prayer at the inauguration event, that was upheld as constitutional. We at Pacific Justice defended Pastor Rick Warren because he was the one that was asked to do this inauguration prayer. And a lawsuit was filed. Give people some background on this. A lawsuit was filed trying to keep him from being able to give the prayer. As it turns out, the Department of Justice would not defend him because he's a private person, private party, expressing himself, and yet invited by the government. So we were contacted the day before this went to the court in D.C., the D.C. District Court, and we went ahead and represented him successfully. It went on appeal, and that's when Judge Brett Kavanaugh ruled, and we had oral argument, and he ruled on this case very clearly and decisively in favor of the constitutionality of prayer. I think that's very important for people to realize. This man is not what I call deophobic or prayer-phobic. He understands it. He gets our history and our heritage as a nation to acknowledge God. Our founding fathers did with regards to our Declaration of Independence.
That's right.
The concept of inalienable rights, fundamental rights as exhibited in the Bill of Rights. It's all understanding that the laws of nature, nature is God. It plays a very relevant role in our history, our heritage, and our function, even in implementing our Constitution. So I really feel good that we have someone like him who is potentially going to be approved to be on the Supreme Court. That to me is an encouragement.
And then one other thing about this, about the position that Judge Kavanaugh took in that time, he was following Supreme Court precedent, which he is bound to do on the Circuit of Court of Appeals. But interestingly, the law has now gotten even better for us on this arena with the Town of Greece case, which took the Marsh case, a legislative case, and applied it to city council and lower governmental meetings. So this is very strong precedent at this point. And for those interested in Judge Kavanaugh following very strong precedent, we're glad that that's where he's at. He has indicated that he follows that precedent.
Yeah,
and I think that's important.
So we have case law saying that state legislators can open up their sessions in prayer.
That's right.
But now we have case law saying, hey, this applies to city council meetings.
That's right.
And I think that's great. And folks, if you're listening to this podcast or watching this on the television, take note of this. Find out if your city council opens up in prayer. And there's a right way to do this that's clearly constitutional. And we at Pacific Justice Institute will help you. We'll do the work. We do all our work without charge. And we have ground troops all throughout America, and we're in the process of implementing more ground troops and more full-time and part-time attorneys in these locales and many of the most hostile places in the country is what we're working on. We just opened an office in Oregon, Salem, Oregon, and we're also in the process of opening an office in Seattle, Washington, another dark blue area, if you will, where there's a lot of intolerance and a need for defense of religious freedom. So if we can help you in your community, wherever you are in the country, contact us. We'd love to help you further in this area and further your community with regards to exercising its First Amendment rights, its religious freedom rights. Now, Michael, I know one of the issues that was brought up with Judge Kavanaugh was dealing with the separation of powers. This is very key to our framers. And one particular senator, I think, did a really good job. Senator Ben Sasse brought this up, and he addressed this before Judge Brett Kavanaugh. What was this point being made here? Because I think it's very significant.
I think it is too, Brad. And for those of you, go to YouTube and find Ben Sasse and the Kavanaugh hearing. It's brilliant, and he sets forth the fact that the framers, they wanted the separation of powers. That is, they wanted a clear the Congress to be a clear legislative branch, the executive, the president, to be a clear and separate but equal branch, and also the court, the Supreme Court, and the federal judiciary as a separate but equal branch of the government. And Senator Sasse points out, I think brilliantly, that the reason why these hearings have become so much of a dog and pony show is because Congress has given away most of its power to the executive branch by EPA and by all the other alphabet soup organizations that run big aspects of our lives.
A lot of regulations that are being just thrown out there instead of being brought into law by legislators representing the people. Right.
That's right. And then, of course, they're asking the Judge Kavanaugh, about almost as if he's a legislature, saying, well, will you uphold the Obamacare Act? Wait a minute. His job is to follow the law. He is not a legislature.
Not to legislate from the bench like an activist judge.
Exactly.
And that's what some of the liberals are like, are you going to... Yeah, and they're like, no, his job is a referee. It's not to engage in basically pushing forth legislation from the judicial bench. That's not their job. And yet we see activist judges being appointed in the past that do just that circumvent we the people, circumvent the legislature, circumvent initiatives that are passed by the people. It's been very frustrating. And so I think it's great to have a judge that is a judge and not a judicial activist and not a legislator. I think he's got that right. And if there's some liberals out there in the Senate trying to make that seem like a bad thing, then they're the ones with the problem. Because we, the people, both from the left and the right, I think deep down we want a judicial system that is fair and looks at the law, calls it like it is, not how they want it to be. And I think that's the basic point that he made very well. You know, we know that these hearings have to be open to the public, I guess, right? I mean, that's basically the historical background, to be open and for people to be able to see this. But this was outrageous what took place. We had these demonstrators orchestrated, we found out, beforehand, by some of the senators to create disruption. That was their purpose. That is what happened. What do you make of this, Michael? I mean, this is new territory that really cheapens our whole process that of proper review of Supreme Court candidates.
Yes, Brad. I've been a student of this for a long time because that's what we do. We are constitutional experts at Pacific Justice. So what happens on the U.S. Supreme Court is very important to us. So I've been watching these hearings for a very long time at various judges, liberal and conservative. And this, I've never seen anything like this. And the temptation is to say, oh, let's just close the whole thing down and it's on TV. No, it can't be like that. As much of a problem as this was, and as embarrassing as this was to the liberals and the people shouting in the gallery, we must have an open, when government hearings are happening, they've got to be open to the people because they're doing our business.
Right.
So sometimes we have to take the good with the bad and the bad with the good, but in reality, we must always have an open hearings. We don't want this to be an excuse of, well, let's shut this down or let's clamp down on all these people making a mess. No, government is messy because we're dealing with people.
At least I'd like it. It needs to be on television. People can watch it and observe it.
Yes.
The people in the balconies who are screaming and yelling and making their commotions, it's just unfortunate. It's so unfortunate, and I wish there was a better way of preventing that in the future. I understand there's about 20 who've been arrested and are going to have charges brought against them. I hope they get the book thrown at them in the name of respect for their Constitution, in the name of respect for our government and our process. I hope they get the book thrown at them, and people understand you can't deliberately be disruptive and disrespectful of our government and our process and procedures without paying a price.
That's right.
And that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, and I think that it embarrassed them because, number one, you couldn't hear hardly anything that they were saying. They were just screaming at the top of their lungs.
Right.
And
At the direction of some of the senators.
That's right.
There who are creating these problems. And I'm not going to name names, but it's just most unfortunate. So, well, Michael, thank you for the work you're doing. Keep it up. And we at Pacific Justice are hopeful that this new judge, I think he's going to be appointed and approved, will choose to be one who is on the side of the people, on the side of the Constitution, and will allow us at Pacific Justice Institute to do our job even better than in the past by having the votes there on the Supreme Court to respect the Constitution, the First Amendment rights and religious freedom of the people we're representing. So God bless you and keep up the good work.
Thanks, Brad. God bless you.
So, folks, there you have it. It's our God-given freedoms we're talking about. Now, let's choose to keep them. I'm Brad Dacus of the Pacific Justice Institute. Have a great weekend.